I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's Commissioner Jacobs' birthday today. I think that should be a special note. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You can start.
No?
The first item on our agenda is public comment period. This is where we provide, you provide public comment at 2 minutes per speaker, up to 10 minutes total, to address the board about any issue that you wish. And Mr. Ganwood, Sheriff Ganwood, excuse me.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our newest deputy. Craig Wurzel is from La Crescent, so he's local. He's familiar with the east end of the county more than the west, but we'll get him trained in.
That's a secret.
He started his law enforcement career in Caledonia, and we brought him here from Caledonia. He's a military veteran, and right now he's going through our FTO program.
Great. Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Born and raised in La Crescent, Minnesota, but I can deal with Winona County. I also work for the fire department there in La Crescent and all that kind of stuff, and plan on living there. But I am proud to be a part of this community and serve you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Go too. I think I know his. I think he.
Anyone else wish to address the board regarding any issue? I will ask that 3 different times. That's what's required by law. Seems redundant, but anyone else wish to speak? Third and final time, anyone else wish to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of county board minutes for the closed session of May 23rd and the county board meeting of May 23rd, 2017.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, seconded by Commissioner Ward, to approve the county board minutes of May 23rd. Both sessions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is to acknowledge receipt of the approved committee minutes for the Planning Commission for their meeting on April 20th, 2017. We have a motion to acknowledge.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Kovesi, to acknowledge receipt of the approved minutes of the Planning Commission for April 20th, 2017. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Consent, comments, and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz.
Yeah, I need to remove item 6.5 for further review. I need to make some changes to it, so it'll just be removed from the agenda.
Okay.
No changes. I just have a remark to make.
Commissioner Ward.
6.9, the approved performance measures resolution. I would like some slight discussion on that for future. And then a couple of announcements, please.
Okay. Commissioner Olson.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Jacob.
I just one announcement.
Okay. County Attorney Sonneman.
Nothing for me on the comment.
Very good. Would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Mr. Fritz.
All right, I'll read the consent business into the record. Committee recommendations: approve conditional use permit for Atlee Shetler Jr. to allow a dwelling on less than 40 acres. 6.1, approve conditional use permit to allow a community solar garden for Lidell's Orchard, Greenmark LLC. 6.3, approve conditional use permit to allow a community solar garden for Lidell's Orchard, Fast Sun LLC. Department recommendations: 6.4, approve large assembly permit and resolution for Family Night on the Farm event. 6.5 has been removed. 6.6, approve resolution of Minnesota Trail Assistance Program. 6.7, approve renewal of 3.2% malt liquor license, Winona Sportsman's Club. 6.8, approve para resolution for Deputy Sheriff. 6.9, approve performance measures resolution.
That's pulled to the next item.
Okay.
Right.
6.10, award bid of County Road 112 overlay to Dunn Blacktop. 6.11, award bid of Odyssey with culvert replacements to Farner Asphalt. 6.12, approve resolution for county cost participation in retaining wall at 35388 Old Homer Road. 6.13, approve the State of Minnesota Department of Public Safety annual plan agreement. And 6.14, confirm payment of disbursements. And that concludes the consent agenda.
We have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Codesi to approve the consent business that was presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries with all voting aye. The next item is 6.9, which is now 7.0, the approvement of performance measures resolution.
And I asked to pull this just to make a comment and ask for us to look at, there's a lot of data in here. And I do remember we signed up for this a number of years ago. We asked staff to record and report a lot of information. And I don't know that if there's information in there we could use to improve things that we're doing, change things that we're doing, but I don't know if we've really had the time or opportunity to analyze the data. So I would just ask at some future meeting that we look at the data and see how it fits to what we're currently doing, and if it still makes sense to have those performance review, those resolutions, measures changed or adjusted, because it has been a number of years since we did them.
Okay.
So, and I know Mr. Fritz is new to this particular thing, so give him an opportunity to review them and then for the board to discuss. So I would move to approve the performance measures resolution.
Second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to approve the performance measures resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries with all voting aye. The next item is 7.1, approve funding drug court of Winona County for the last 2 quarters of 2017.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, we've prepared this request because the drug court of Winona County is in danger, as I've put in the agenda request, of shutting down due to lack of funding, because at the current time we're being funded by a state appropriation, and the state has a fiscal year of June 30th ending. So we're in a point where we're asking for the county's help. I've prepared in the agenda request a pretty detailed summary, so I'm not going to go into that because I think it's more important for you to know that there are many people who I see out in the audience who are drug court team members, members of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which is the CJCC originally applied for and received on behalf of the county a planning and an implementation grant for drug court. So I'd like to, they can talk about it, but I'd like to ask our district court judge, who's our drug court judge, Nancy Beitendorp, to come up, and then to be followed by Wendy Van Dyne, who is the court administrator for Winona County District Court, to speak to you about the drug court and the funding issues. So if Judge Beitendorp can come up to the podium.
Good morning.
Good
Good morning.
As many of you know, I've been the drug court judge since we started 5 years ago. And as you know, I've been in the criminal justice system for a long time. I'm not going to say how many years because it is a very long time. As a prosecutor, I prosecuted controlled substance cases. I prosecuted felonies involved in the chemical dependency problems here in Winona County. I didn't see a whole lot of success as a judge. I became involved in our drug court, as I said, 5 years ago, and it's the first time in my entire career, which is spans over 25 years, that I've actually seen some success with chemical dependency issues here in Winona County. We have participants that come into our program They're homeless. They're facing multiple charges. They're estranged from their families. They're just a mess. And we deal with them. By the time they graduate, they have homes, they're working, they're law-abiding, they're paying their taxes, they're supporting their families, paying their child support. It's an amazing thing. I've never seen anything like it. I've read about drug courts before we even started, and what you read is just these success stories after success stories. And now, since we've done this, we've seen those same success stories. It's amazing. We have one of our graduates now that has been in the system, the criminal justice system, as long as I've been in the criminal justice system. Probably 20-some years now, and that person was not on the same side of the criminal justice system that I was on. He came into our program, just this total mess, homeless, had so many problems. Now he even comes to committees that I'm on one Wednesday evening a month. He is always at the committees. He's very productive in these committees. It's amazing the changes that we've seen in these people. And I know that having our drug court participants out of the system, out of the criminal justice system, it reduces our CHIPS actions. It reduces our criminal cases. These graduates that we have, they're not in jail. They're not in trial. They're not involved in our CHIPS cases. A lot of them had previously been involved in our CHIPS cases. They're no longer doing that. They're actually paying their child support. So we do see a savings in that sense. But I am a big supporter of our drug court. I can't even explain how successful it's really been. Like I've said, I've been in the system for over 25 years, and this is the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my entire career. And we really do need the support, and I believe that we save money in the long run, because as I indicated, these individuals are no longer in our jails. When they're in our jails, they have to pay fees, but oftentimes those fees are not even paid. We are requesting that funding and some help with our drug court, because I would really hate to see us have to close up shop here. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak. Drug court works. In 5 years, there's been 21 graduates. Only one person has relapsed. 20 people are back in the community, and they're from Winona. And they're working in Winona. They're contributing to the tax base of Winona. They're no longer involved in drawing money off in not just their criminal cases, but in their child protective service cases, which require an attorney for every child, requires payment of guardian ad litem fees, social services workers. The monetary savings is very dramatic, and we now put these, but the contribution to the community is also very dramatic, because now you have people that are back in normal, everyday citizen life, and they're contributing. The program was originally funded through a temporary federal grant, as you know. That grant ran out last year, and the court received a one-time appropriation, which was enough to get us through this fiscal year. The hope was that the Minnesota Digital Branch went to the state legislature seeking more stable, long-term funding solutions for all the drug courts in Minnesota. Most of those drug courts were under what's called the funding formula. Because our grant ran out and we received a one-time appropriation, we were not under any funding formula. The legislature did finally approve funding in the final hours of their session, and this was signed into law last Tuesday. So there is money in the drug court funding formula. However, given how recently this funding is approved, it's really too early to say how it will impact us, whether we will be put into funding formula and whether it will be enough. That money has to be apportioned over all the drug courts that were already in funding formula and those new ones that may be swept in. but we're not sure where we stand at this point. Judicial Council is going to be meeting next week, and they will be making some decisions. And at that point, I'll know better where we stand. It is important to note that state funding, even if we are put into funding formula, was never intended to cover our full operational costs. Drug courts remain in partnership with county court and our justice partners, so we will still be in a situation where we will be needing to have participation from the community. My emphasis here is that I have been doing this a very long time, as has Judge Beitendorf and County Attorney Sonneman and many, many people that are back here. And this is a diversion program that truly does work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that this is also, and it's all in the agenda. I tend to write better than I speak sometimes. But this is truly a collaborative effort. And as Ms. Van Dyne said, it's not just the state that hopefully would be funding this program. The county has graciously allowed, like myself and members of Sheriff Ganrud's staff, to be on the drug court team. That's an in-kind support that we give to drug court. And as is in the agenda request, just from criminal justice costs alone of cost avoidance, as it says, for every $1 that goes into drug courts, $3, and I think it's actually $3.20 or something, but is of costs that are avoided. That does not include costs of less child protection cases, less having to go to court to collect child support, less cost to the mental health and the medical systems here in the community. And as Wendy Van Dyne had mentioned, we have had our graduates here. These are Winona County citizens. In fact, the qualifications for drug court is that you have to be a resident of Winona County. So we're not, if there's any concerns about, well, who's in the program, these are Winona County citizens who've lived here all their lives. In fact, our most recent graduate grew up here. During the graduation, people kept saying, "I remember you when you were a little girl." And now she's a graduate of drug court and a very productive one. So we're asking for essentially a stopgap funding of $42,247.50, which, if you look at the budget specifics that I've included on the agenda request, that's half, or the second half of 2017. So that's the amount we're asking for. If hopefully the state comes through and funds the drug court, then we would come and tell you, if you approve this, thanks, now we can, the state will fund this and you don't have to fund us. But we're in that kind of very never land of, we need the money to keep going and we don't know what the state's going to do. So we're asking the county to help us out and pay for the $42,247 that we need to keep going. Thank you.
Board? Sorry. I guess I missed that one.
Marie was.
Oh, first? Go ahead, Marie.
I just want to say thank you to the people who presented today and to all of you who work in the drug court. I've been to several of the graduation programs. They are extremely moving, extremely telling about the work that's done and the length of work and the depth of work that's done. It's not a once-over-lightly program. People's lives do change. And on the monetary side, I think it's obvious that we are using this program to save money. After we did the NIC training, the National Institute of Corrections training, if it wasn't obvious before, it was fairly obvious throughout all of those planning days that we spent of how important diversion programs are in general, but in particular programs. This program is evidence-based. It's proven in our county. It has a history of proof. Not only are the citizens, 95% of the graduates do not relapse, was one of the pieces of information. Not only are they productive citizens in our community, but I see them giving back. I've been to Alliance for Substance Abuse program meeting, which is a prevention coalition that we are working with our youth in Winona County, and there were at least 80 people at a community meeting on the East End to listen to the stories of several of the recent drug court graduates. And they were volunteering their time at that point. That's not a condition of their program. And like Judge Butendorp said, you know, people are volunteering now to come back and give back to our community and to our program. To me, it's a win-win. And I would support the continued funding with the idea that if the state is able to make any contribution at all, obviously, it will be appreciated. We've used other people's money, so to speak, for quite a while to benefit our community. So if it's our time to put in a small amount of $42,000, I think it balances out with what we've been getting from our staff, from our program, because this is extra. You guys made room for this in your procedures and how you work. So it was a big adjustment, and I think it's been a win-win. I noticed that in some of the statistics we have, Commissioner Ward pointed these statistics out earlier in the meeting, but on page 211 in our agenda packet, there's one that I found particularly disturbing. The finding deals with mental and substance abuse use disorders mortality. Winona County had 6.6 females, 14.7 males involved in this category, and the percent change from 1980 to 2014 is 376% for females and 254% for males. If that doesn't tell you that we have a problem, the offenses and clearances on page 2003 mentioned that for drug abuse violations, we had 48 drug abuse violations, which factoring into our per 100,000 people, the crime rate per 100,000 people in that category is 336 per 100,000 people. And this is not a crime rate. This is not a one-person offense. It does affect, obviously, the substance abuser, but it affects their family, their children, their extended family. It may affect their neighbors if they're committing crimes. It affects their employers because they're not productive citizens. And, you know, to me, it's one of those things that goes very deep, and if we have a program that addresses it, I'm willing to sponsor it. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, I certainly would agree and, echo the sentiments that it's a very effective program. There's no doubt about it. A lot of good work being done for the community. My concerns are always not just to be compassionate with the people that this program is going to serve, but also with the people that have to pay for the program. One of the questions I asked Judge Beitendorp when I was at the after one of the drug court meetings was, do we have any antiquated programs that we could let go of? I mean, whenever we expand government, to me, it's important. Can we clean house anywhere? Is there anything we can let go of? And also, what work has been done to look for alternative funding streams other than the county board or the county property tax levy? So I'd like those two questions answered before I really have another comment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Regarding other funding streams, you can apply for grants, but there's a timing on that. And because we did not anticipate that there would be any issue with our budget as a whole, the judiciary did not realize there would be any issue with the budget itself. And we didn't know it would come down to the very last minute in the way that it did. That window for grants for this year had passed. So certainly that is something that we will look into for next year, but for this year, that window had passed. As far as your question about other programs, drug court was initiated as a totally new program, and because it is funded in the most by state funding, with cooperation from the community, but not 100% cooperation. You're not 100% responsible. I don't foresee that there would be any other state program that would then be cut because of drug court. Drug court is part of diversion, and it is probably the crown jewel in diversion because it works so well. So I'm not sure what you mean by what would be taken away. This would be.
So what I'd asked the judge was, at this point, you're asking for local funding, not state funding. So this will be some local staff time used for local purposes. Inevitably with government, it grows and expands, and things that made perfect sense 20, 30, 40 years ago, we still go through the motions. What I asked was, have we, kind of cleaned house, so to speak, to make sure that there's nothing left that motions that we might be going through that are consuming staff's work or resources? Because, I ran on a platform to not expand government, stop the expansion of government. And this is an expansion. And I think it's an easy expansion to support. But with that, are there other resources anywhere? Have you looked? Have you ferreted out every corner that there's no resources that are being consumed that could be let go of in order to, make the most efficient use of our money with this new and effective program?
We have made a request to the state to fund this program, but again, even with state funding, the idea of drug court was never to completely 100% fund drug court. That there would always be some type of community cooperation. So, and it's a brand new type of program. I don't believe there was any other type of program that was a precursor that they would have gotten rid of to replace drug court, as it is shaped and formulated now. There are other diversion programs, but this is pretty unique in the way that it's been developed. So honestly, I'm not sure that any state program has been done away with.
It doesn't have to be a state program. It could be. We're asking for local resources. I'm asking if there's anything internally.
County, as far as county, I have to defer to Carmen for that.
Commissioner Jacob, if I could just address that, I guess, and I'll say ahead of time that I'm a true believer in drug court as well. I
think everyone is.
Yeah. But as Judge Beitendorf was saying, she prosecuted cases. I defended people who are now in drug court when I was a public defender, and we saw the cycle of people going in and out and in and out and in and out, and then it went where they're children. And so I look at drug court not as a new or expansion of a government program, but addressing problems in the system that weren't working. And as the judge said, this is the first time we've seen really success on addressing substance abuse and frankly, mental health problems too. So I don't consider it an expansion of government. In fact, it's helped reduce costs in other areas of the county. As we've put in our request, there's less, I mean, for instance, on truancies, we spend a lot of time, and truancies is a form of a child protection case, a status offense. There's so many collateral good effects of drug court, and if I could, I'd give you the numbers, but just that $1 to $3 cost avoidance is one of them. So I really look at it as addressing problems that were occurring in our system already on the state, federal, local level, and we've had such success. And even those people who don't get through the program, they've had a taste of what it is to be sober, and many of them want to get back in. So I think the judge might want to.
Jacobs, you mentioned what are some of the programs that are kind of antiquated that we could get rid of in order to have this drug court. I don't think it's one particular program. As I said before, we have individuals going through our program that are involved in CHIPS cases, and I know that the county lately is spending a lot of money on CHIPS cases because of our chemical dependency issue in the court system. That's a big chunk of my my job, our CHIPS cases. And if we continue to address these cases kind of upfront with our drug court, we can have fewer CHIPS cases. Child support, our graduates are paying their child support now. So it kind of eliminates the need for some of the programs that we're still going to have, but maybe it lessens the need for as much programming in that area, CHIPS cases, child support cases, fewer trials. We have the option of drug court, so we have fewer cases where the county attorney's office is actually going to trial, because with these individuals that go through our drug court program, their only option, if they go to trial and are convicted, they go to prison. So now, and they know that. They know that it's because we take the high risk, high needs. It's really either prison or drug court. And so if it's prison or drug court, or if it's just prison is the option, I'm going to go to trial because there might be an opportunity or a chance that I'm found not guilty. So it's a savings in different areas, but not necessarily to get rid of those antiquated programs. We're still going to have those. I'm not sure what we can take over. With regard to funding, the state and we are working with our district to make sure that we have enough participants in our drug court so that we can fit into this funding formula. So we're not just relying on the county. We are still working with our district in order to make sure that we can get into this funding formula with the state so that we can also get the state money. So we're still looking at that. We also have our coordinator who's going to a conference, I believe, next week on grant writing. So she's going to be trained in grant writing. We're using some of our money from the state that we got through this year, through June 30th of this year. She's getting one-on-one training for grant writing. So we're looking for other funding sources. We are definitely doing that. So does that answer your question? A little bit.
Well, yeah, it certainly helps. I guess to the board, I would say that it feels like the state hasn't said no at this point. It sounds like they're still evaluating which programs, which counties are going to receive funding in the future. And so another concern I would have there is once we say, okay, we'll kind of be the stopgap, or we'll take over the funding for now, I think the state is going to look at, Winona County's picking it up, and we'll drop off the radar from the state as being one of the counties that will receive funding. For that reason, and for the reason that I think more work could be done on looking for antiquated programs, I'm going to make a motion to put this on the table until we see what the state, where the state goes with their funding, and that we look a little harder on what programs are existing.
That's a motion?
That's a motion.
Motions to table aren't debatable, if I recall. Is that correct? If there's a
Right.
second.
And I do have a few questions to be asked before I would support the motion. So can we hold that thought?
We can hold that thought because there isn't a second for it yet.
I think if there's not a second, it fails.
Yeah.
Well, we can come back. My turn?
Your turn,
Okay.
yes.
There were a couple statements said, so this funding formula, we've been doing this 5 years. Why haven't we tried to get into the funding formula earlier? And how many in our district are on the funding formula?
What I can say is, first of all, when we first started, we had a federal grant. We had $300,000, more than that. And so that's why we were never in the funding formula at first. And then we carried over that 3-year grant, went into the 4th year. And then right at the 4th year, when we ran out of money, then the state came in and gave us another $100,000, and that's what we're working on now. That's why we were never in that funding formula. So now we're kind of just new to that right now, and that's why we weren't in it before, because we did get those grants, that grant in the beginning.
So how many are currently in our district in that funding formula? Who are we competing with? And are those the question, and I have the same angst as Commissioner Jacob. If we said we're going to fund it, that gives the state an out. They say, well, Winona County's taking care of it, and it's not just drug court. It's most programs that they start with grants and everything. This is a governmental thing. So I'm not picking on drug court. It's just the way they do business. So again, how many dollars are in this funding formula? How many drug courts in the district are competing for those dollars? And if we have such a high success rate, because I've read some other articles in when you Google general drug courts, they don't have the success rates you're telling me about in Winona County. So I'm a little, and I know statistics, you can make statistics talk the way you want it to talk. I have a little hard time buying the 95% comparative to some other research I did. So we don't know how many other drug courts are competing for this funding or how much the funding is? At this time, we could get that information?
There are several drug courts in the district. Some of them are very well funded by community, and some are in our situation.
So we could pull that together. We could pull that information together.
Well, it's not just our district though.
Well, the judge said our district.
Well, we are working with our district absolutely for whatever funding we get, but there's other districts that are also needing funding.
Right.
So we're not going to know what our funding situation is until Judicial Council makes some decisions next week.
Okay, I guess my question is that I don't know who I'm competing for. Is it even worth competing? Are you giving us a reasonable expectation that we may get into the funding formula looking forward? This is June. We're doing budgets for 2018. I don't know, and I guess I'm a little concerned that I don't know what my chance of Winona County getting funding for, because several people have talked about partnerships. This is a great partnership. Yes, we've got the courts, we got the jail, we got the county attorney's office, we got the prisons and everything. But it seems to me like we're kind of unequal partners in that we're the ones being asked for money. Courts aren't giving it any money. The state is kind of pulling that money back from what you're telling me. Prison is a federally funded organization. I mean, you say you go to drug court or you go to prison. So if you go to prison, that's federal dollars, right? Prison?
State. Depends on which what you've
prison?
been convicted of.
Right.
And
So,
by
I mean,
which court.
I feel that we're asking our local property tax dollars to fund it in 100%, like next year that you're in your literature you're saying. You're going to ask for the full 84 in the 2018 budget.
Well, that again, if I may, Commissioner Ward, that depends on the state again, and we don't know what the state's going to do, and we've said that this is a stopgap. I mean, we're up against it's June 13th, so it's 2 weeks really to the end of the month. We're trying to preserve something that's been working. And this is the first time we've actually asked for direct funding from the county, this whole program. So the 42,000 is the first time that we're actually asking for a cash to support our budget. And as you may note in the presentation materials, we've also started a Friends of Drug Court, because that was one of the things in our training back in 2012, talked about how we have to work with the community to also look at sustainability. So some of us have started what's called the Friends of Drug Court, and ideally, someday, that may fund these programs. But it really needs to be funded, and each partner needs to put in a little bit. Again, I guess, I can't say enough about how drug court is really saving money to the county and, yes, to the state, because these people then don't go to the state prisons. That's where they would go. But that's our taxpayer dollars. And I think the cost of incarcerating somebody for a year is now up to probably $45,000 a year, if not more. So, again, it's a program that works, and I think we have such a success rate because we have a team that works, and we've always strived to make it work regardless of what kind of peril we're in terms of funding. So you have dedicated people from all walks of life. We have people who are mentoring, Steve and Mary Baumgart, who are out there. They mentor our participants, and that's added such a dimension to their lives. And we have the full support of the Sheriff's Office and the participants there, the City of Winona Police Department. We have our treatment folks. It's really one of those amazing collaborative things that works. And I've been in this criminal law business for 27 years now, and it really is one of those things that you don't see very often, but actually works and turns people's lives around. Makes our community better.
So again, some of the other research I did, reading other people's publications, didn't paint as a successful story. They had more recidivism, they had more dropouts, they called them non-completers,
Right.
and they tracked jail time and prison time. So I'm getting a little, by doing some other research, I'm getting a little mixed story. So
Well, and they may
it's
not
good
be
that Winona is doing
Right,
so
we're,
great.
We're following best practices. There's other communities that don't follow best practices, or they serve participants who are low risk, low need, and that doesn't work. We're high risk, high need, which intuitively doesn't seem like, is that going to work? But it does, and it's there's been 25 plus years now, because Miami-Dade County in Florida was the first drug court. There's been 25 plus years of research on drug courts, and in fact, we just came out with 2 new volumes of best practices standards. As a team, we just went to the state drug court conference to learn about, are there ways that we can even do better? So we're constantly striving. So I think it's kind of not appropriate to compare ourselves to other counties, because we're really a court of, I think, excellence in terms of the drug court model, and we're looked at as a model for other drug courts in the state. So.
For 5 years, we said we had, you love statistics. 5 years, we had 21 graduates. In 5 years, how many participants did we have? We had 21 graduates.
40, I think. 40. It's in the materials.
Okay. And again, I'm going back to this other research I did. Where are those people? Did they reoffend? Are they in, we said the cost savings for prison. Are they still in the system? Have they turned their lives around? You said, they get the feeling of being sober. Was it a good feeling, or did they reoffend? Or that's part of the research that I think needs to be brought out. Is we got great successes, but they're not all successful, unfortunately.
There should be an answer to that right now, shouldn't there? What happened to the other 19 people?
Well, anecdotally, many of them went to prison because that's the alternative. They violated their probation. And I think that's another important part that I didn't emphasize as much in the materials is these folks, the participants, are on felony probation. They are supervised. In fact, they're intensely supervised. If they fail at drug court for whatever reason, they then go to district court and face probation revocation proceedings. And many of them do then end up in state prison, and we as taxpayers pay a heck of a lot more money for them to be housed there. Anecdotally, too, there are some repeat offenders, but for the most part, they're relatively, I think, they haven't come back in the system, but they're not as productive, let's say, as those graduates, and they haven't learned the, and they have not gotten sober, and they continue to use the expensive services of the mental health and health system, as well as the county social services. So it's these graduates, and that's a big number for over. I mean, this is a long program. I think it's 18 months is our minimum. So it's a long program. So 21 is really, I think.
But a
an
drug
amazing number.
or alcohol problem, I've been told, is for life. It doesn't go away.
Well, I think you're always a recovering substance
Addict or
abuser.
Substance abuse. So.
Right, but this helps them continue to be in recovery and not be in active use.
It gives them the tools.
Right.
Are you finished, Marcia?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Kovetsky.
I'd just like to point out on page 243 of our agenda, there are some statistics. It says the remaining 19, it says 21 people have successfully graduated of the 40 involved. The remaining 19 were terminated for the following reasons. Voluntary withdrawal, so they found the program too hard or too rigorous. They weren't ready to face the other life seemed easier, whatever. Participant noncompliance, that sounds like kind of the same thing. They weren't ready to follow through with what they were promising to do. Criminal activity and participant death. Those are serious dropout reasons. Of only 3 participants out of 19 were terminated for criminal activity during their time in the drug court. Of the 21 participants who successfully graduated, only 1 came back into the relapse phase. And I actually attended some of his sessions, and I believe he's working still through the program. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah. So came back for another round. I think one of the reasons that I see that this works, and I was new to this when I came on the board, and I joined the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council as a board liaison, is that it takes a systematic approach at a system-wide problem. It's not isolating any one particular service. It's not isolating any one particular factor. It's saying, here's the package of issues the person has. Here's the team that's organized to address this. And they're not new team members. There's not new staff. The only new staff, I believe, is the drug court coordinator. So it's not necessarily an expansion. It's a redirection of how we are operating to be more efficient and to be more effective, mostly, because it works as a system and it addresses a system. I'm not happy the state has put us in this position of not knowing where we stand with funding. The community support, I think, is the piece of the package that hasn't been there. We've all spoken as advocates. We've all been very appreciative of the work that's been done. But actually, our citizens pay for this program. All the citizens pay. The children of these offenders pay. The neighbors, the employers, those kinds of costs go right through our community. Our taxpayers pay again if we revoke this or change this, because, as you know, our jail is a certain category, and we have now increased costs of jail transport, and if the previous cycle was cycle in, cycle out, continuing to come in and out of jail for these offenses, that's a continuing cost that our taxpayers support also. So to me, I don't like where the state has put us. I think we can make a case that we are totally outraged that we might not be in the pool. I have a question. Are we in the formula option simply by existing as a drug court program? Are all the drug court programs in the same pool, or there's 19 in the pool and we're out here? I said 19 because I made that up. I don't know if there's 19 in the pool, but. I mean, I would like to be in the funding formula race just because we, like all the other drug courts, are a drug court.
We are in the funding formula raise.
Okay.
So we are definitely being considered for that, and we have to be an underfunded formula. There's certain things that you have to have. You have to have been established for a certain amount of time. You have to have a certain amount of participants, things of that nature. So we tick off those boxes. So I am very hopeful that we're going to, be under this formula.
I think we ticked them off very well. Excuse me.
Right. Yes,
We have served as a model. Do you know how many other drug courts have come to, or other counties have come to Winona to kind of study our methods, or has that's been happening around the state as new drug courts are spawned?
Well, some have not only come to observe, but I myself have gotten calls from people, for instance, in Olmsted County, which just, recently started their drug
Sorry
court.
for interrupting you, but I really wanted to
But,
make that point.
they ask questions about, how do you do this? How do you do that? Help us out. So we've helped out Olmsted and the Steele, Mower County Drug Court. We all are very collegial in that way.
Thank you.
And so like I said, since
we
we
are in the
do
race.
qualify, I'm very hopeful that we will be included in funding formula. But again, that money hasn't been apportioned out. So we're just in jeopardy at this point because we just don't know how much of the funding formula we will qualify for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacob, and then the sheriff would like to make a comment. That's all right.
So as I ask questions, the conversation cycles back to the effectiveness of the program and the good it's doing for the community and how financially effective that is. And I'm not disagreeing or arguing with any of that. I agree that it's a good program. I agree that it's beneficial. So when this program started was probably about when I came on the county board, 5 years ago, was that?
2012.
Okay, so, but I remember questions being asked about, okay, we're going to accept this grant. There's going to be a lot of responsibilities that go with it, but certainly you're not saying that when state funding runs out that you're going to come to the county board and ask to fund it. And then it was like, no, that's not how it's not going to end up on the county property tax levy. But that's exactly what's happening right now. And I think a couple of my concerns is that this particular board has become basically maybe the path of least resistance. And instead of being the last resort for the program, we've become the first resort. Just don't even find out whether the state is going to follow through with the formula and fund the program. Just come to this county board because they'll be compassionate and put it on the property tax levy, and that's easier than going through the hierarchy or the process of making all the formal applications. So I'm frustrated with the process, and that's why I haven't said no. What I've said is I'd like to table it, and I'd like to have more work done on the application process, and if there's any other programs that can be removed from the county that are consuming resources that could make up for this. Those are the things that I've asked for, so that we're not just compassionate with the criminal or the people that are going to benefit from the program, but we're also compassionate to the people that pay for the program.
Commissioner Kadesi?
I see a grant program as a possibility or an opportunity to experiment. You take a new idea that isn't being used, you shape it around whatever guidelines are in the grant, and you use those to create a new opportunity for your county or for your citizens. And at the end of the time, you have data to show whether that was an effective redirection of those resources or whether it was superfluous or unnecessary or could be covered by some other way. So when I look at our federal grants that we've accepted, I don't look at them as saying, okay, you have 3 years and then find your own way. I say you have whatever time the grant has to show us the data of whether your program is effective and efficient and whether, it becomes a county responsibility. We ask property taxes to fund all the programs for public safety and for public health. And so to me, this is another one of those programs. Again, I don't like the fact that the state, with its indecision and its last-minute shenanigans, for lack of a better word, has put us in this position. I am totally outraged, and I think we can make a case that this is an emergency situation. We do not want the funding to lapse after June 30th. What if if we delay this and the state doesn't get their act together? It's June 13th. They don't have a good history of getting their act together in June. We have no certainty that we would have funding July 1st for this program. And, if we wanted to go month by month, that's a pretty limited way to do it. But, over 4 years, we've had all of these services, we've had all of these programs, we've had all of this coordination, we've had all of this success. We've had all of the savings, not only to the participants in the drug court, but also to the people of the county, because we're not paying for transport, we're not paying for jail costs, we're not paying for child support, we're not paying for neighbors who are going to court with crimes being committed against them. We have, for 21 people, we have completed the issues, and they are now on the plus side in many, many ways. So if you average that out, I think it works out to be a pretty good bargain. I'm still outraged at the state, and I still think the state has some responsibility to fund us, and I don't think we would put our total state funding in jeopardy by funding a portion of it right now as an emergency. We are in a very unique situation, unfortunately. And again, I resent that. I think it's unfair. We have a program that works. It works very well, and it works to uphold public safety and public health in our community. And we know that as a fact. So I would be in favor of supporting it temporarily until we know more from the state.
If it would be okay with the board, Mr. Ganwood wishes to speak for a moment.
Thank you for taking a couple minutes for me. I just want to say that when I was chief deputy, I wasn't entirely for drug court. It just didn't seem like, to me, I didn't know enough about it. I wasn't familiar with it, and I was very skeptical. I would say now, 5 years later, 6 years later, it's a great program. It benefits everyone in the county. Definitely benefits our jail. We do not have these people coming back in. They come in and get their urine tests taken. We monitor them. We go do house checks. We do compliance checks to make sure that they're obeying their curfew and they're not using. I didn't think we would have time to do that, but we do it when we're not busy. We randomly schedule them. We use our SOAR team to go and do random searches and checks. And I just find that call it babysitting or whatever you want to call it, that we do does keep people in line. And by keeping them in line, they're staying out of our jail, which is saving us a lot of money and a lot of headaches there. And it's just a good program.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay, I had a question. Thank you, Sheriff. You drank the Kool-Aid, right? You drank the Kool-Aid. And I don't think anybody here is debating the merits of it. It's funding, and like I said earlier, it's not just this program. It's the way government works, and I'm amazed at how much every county spends doing things, and we all are delegated to do the same things, but we all do them a little bit different. So we all spend different amounts of money. We've talked about this funding formula, and we work on funding formulas in a lot of things. And I'm a big part of Association of Minnesota Counties, and I don't serve on the Public Safety Committee, so I don't know if they've addressed this funding formula, but I'm going to find out. That's Association of Minnesota Counties, is all 87 counties belong to it. We have different areas of interest in committed committees, and I'm going to find out if they've addressed this funding formula. But with that said, what pot of money is this funding formula? Who controls the funding formula? Is it the legislature? Where's this money coming from?
I think that would be a question for Ms. Van Dyne.
Who is in control of the money? And while you're thinking about that one, do we have local legislators on board supporting this? They're the ones that control. It's all about politics, folks. We know that. They're the ones that control the state money and how things, in their own little way, in a very small way. But do we have their support, or have we solicited their support? Have we solicited their input and their political pressure to get us funding?
The funding formula is the state's formula.
But what part of the state?
It comes from
What pot of money do we know?
from the budget that we receive.
I think she's asking what department.
Yeah, what department? Department of
Corrections?
Corrections, or?
No. We're a branch of government.
Yeah,
So,
I
so we
understand that.
receive, so we receive every biennium, we receive a budget, and the money that we receive the budget, I believe it's the general fund, comes to us. Just like the executive branch and the legislative branch receive.
Well, but wait, no. We've been running this program under grants, and then the 100,000, wasn't that that was an extension? So I guess I'm confused where this money's coming from. Where did the 100,000 come from?
The state gave us $100,000.
Okay, I get.
It was the court.
It was the
Court?
court,
Judiciary.
it was the Minnesota Judicial Branch gave us $100,000.
Okay, all right. So the second question, have we contacted our local legislative representatives to solicit and help obtain funding?
Right.
Yeah, we do. We do have local legislators that are aware of the program, that do write letters to our graduates.
I'm looking for, I understand they support it here locally, but are they trying to help us get money at the state level? Have we asked them to contact the check writer that we need money to keep this program going? Are we using all avenues of influence, I guess is what I'm asking, and it doesn't sound like we are.
Well, I think we work on that, if not specifically, but we have received and asked for the support of Senator Amy Klobuchar, and that's on the federal level. She's a big supporter of drug court, and again, we started with a federal grant. I have gone and talked to Senator Miller, and this was a couple of years ago, about drug court as well as about crime victims. We have not specifically gone to our legislators, Senator Miller and Representative Pulowski or Representative Drozdkowski, and then our newer one, Senator
Goggins.
Thank you. Specifically about this. This kind of came up. We're all kind of waiting for the legislature to act, and then as Ms. Van Dyne said, there was some issues with the budget, the judiciary budget, and everything kind of went into a what's going to happen now mode. So again, I think, you talk about, well, why are we, coming to the county? The county's always supported this program, but this is, like I said, the first time we've actually asked for dollars. The county, through our salaries, Sheriff Ganrud's and mine and our staff have supported drug court. But it's one of those timing issues, and I think we're being responsible coming before you, asking for your support of a program that serves Winona County residents.
Commissioner.
Thank you.
I just had I serve on the Association of Minnesota Counties Health and Community Services Committee, and we have had joint meetings with the public safety, and this was, there was an initiative, AMC Supports County Initiative, that reduced the incarceration of those with mental illness in local jails and redirects the existing county cost share dollars to efforts that increase mental health system capacity. And as part of this, it says, well, counties would prefer the elimination of these cost shares. As long as they are in place, this revenue should be used in ways that meet county needs in delivering these services. And I think this is one of the unique ways that our county has chosen, and one of the model ways, as we've learned, because other people are looking at our model and reproducing it. So we are, the short answer is the AMC does support funding for public safety and mental health issues in the jail programs, and this is one of those programs. So as I see it, the legislature tried to not be in the last week rush, but somehow we got caught up in that, and everyone supports the concept. And if the money can come from a combination of state and local, I think that's appropriate. We locally benefit. We locally pay if we don't have this program in process. We're paying for it now if we in some of those other issues, and we know it reduces costs. That's not even counting the human factor and the quality of life issue, which to me is also critical. So yes, it's on the AMC program, and we have discussed it in both the Community Services Committee and the Public Safety Committee. I'm not sure we have a direct representative to the Public Safety Committee.
And it's particularly the funding formula, the question.
Yeah.
May I?
Sure.
Looks like we're out of lights here. Unless here's what's on. I guess I'm just going to call it like I see it. I see the drug court as a very valuable resource in the community. I've seen the effects of their work. I've seen people completely transformed. And I've seen it at a number of different graduations where you see people that are just starting and then you follow through to when they graduate. It's beyond incredible. And when I look at the mission of the county, this program fits in with that mission. It fits it like a glove. And while there's a lot of discussion about how it's going to be funded, and yes, we sure would like state funding on that, and I'm sure that you're going to continue your efforts to get us in under the formula so that we can get some state dollars for it. But I would be supportive of this regardless of the source of funding, because I think it makes that big of a difference. We're talking about the possibility of a different jail or other alternatives. There's no doubt in my mind that the census of the jail is less now, partly because of the drug court and the number of people that were your frequent flyers that would come in and out of the court from time to time. And the jail, spending, much more time there than they probably needed to. So I heartily endorse it, and if nobody else has any comments, I think the chair can make a motion, and I move to approve the request.
Second.
Nice. Thank you.
We have a motion by the chair and second by Commissioner Olson to approve the request being mindful that if state funds are received, they would supplant the funds that we're talking about today. And that's where we are. Commissioner Ward.
Do have a question, maybe for administration. Where will these funds come from? County attorney's budget?
Well, today, you're asking staff, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where, reserves, or where will the money come from?
Well, drug court's listed under, I think, the county attorney's office right now, so.
Right, so
the
I
spending will
wasn't
come out of there.
totally.
Well, yeah, right now, drug court and, what else, Pat, did you put under my budget?
We moved the two other ones, if you're thinking about care and the other one, that got moved to law enforcement.
Right,
but
care and,
drug court's still under,
Yeah, drug
law
court
library.
actually has its own department, but actually that's under Karen's direction.
Maybe,
So do we have reserves? or-
well, what I could mention here is, I mean, as of the financial statements, as of when they were prepared, and this is probably the lowest point of cash flow in the year, there's over $13 million in reserves. Plus, county program aid's going to go up $190,000 to $200,000. And so, I mean, I think it's just very worthwhile to make sure that we continue this, so.
yeah, I mean, any unbudgeted amount, any unbudgeted amount, if the budget was adhered to 100%, exactly equal, would come off of reserves. But the fact is that the budget fluctuate, or the actual expenses fluctuate, and so in the end, it all comes out in the wash.
All right, well, just need to ask. And then this may seem strange coming from me, but you do read that drug court of Winona County is post-conviction. I will ask this group to follow the Blue Earth County Yellow Line, and I've mentioned this previously, the Yellow Line Project program, which is a pre-conviction. They're referring to the yellow line when you come into the jail. I don't know if we have a yellow line or a blue line or a red line, but before they cross that line and they're not convicted, because drug court is post-conviction. You know, I find it strange that you can either go to drug court or prison. It seems pretty contrasting choices. But I asked the group to look at pre-conviction programming.
Yeah, I think in some ways our ASAP, Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention, takes a look at that. And they've been in operation, this is their second or third year. And they've been doing Parents Who Host campaigns, hitting at all of the preliminary aspects of drug use and substance use in our county, and working with the youth. So to me, that's appropriate. That's another grant program, so we'll have to take a look at that.
Could I just speak to we do have a diversion program, misdemeanor diversion program, that I implemented when I became county attorney, because we hadn't had one. We also have a juvenile diversion program, both for juvenile delinquencies and truancies, which have reduced the number of truancies that have come through the court system. So those are all, if you want to call it, pre-conviction. We did have a felony diversion program. That was for property crimes mostly and kind of low level, but that wasn't being utilized. So that's the program we actually ended. To your point, Commissioner Jacob. So we do have it on the front end and the back end with drug court, and then now with our new Justice Mental Health Collaboration Program grant, we're looking at ways to help people come out of the system along the system intercept map, I think it is. So we are working on those as well, and actually have programs in place.
Are we ready to vote? Commissioner Jacob?
I agree with everything about the program, everything that you said. There's just no disagreement with that in any way, shape, or form. It's a great program. And my motion to table was not to not support the program. It was, I feel that this motion that we're doing right now is premature. When we looked for funding for our roads, I voted against property tax for 2 years, the property tax increase, and tried to hold our state representatives accountable to bring money back to Winona County to support our crumbling roads. And this request comes forward, you know, we haven't worked with our state representatives. We haven't spent that time. I just feel as though, like I said, it's premature. I would support it, but I'd like to see more work. So I'm not going to support the motion, not because I don't think good work is being done. I just think we need to hold others accountable other than just our local property tax constituents. And that sends a message that we're not going to hold anyone else accountable.
Okay. Anyone else? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is 7.2 from the Planning and Environmental Services Department. It's to discuss and approve resolution for opt-in election of State Aid Administration of Riparian Shoreland Protection.
See, now they shouldn't leave because we get to talk about water and dirt, and it's the same thing. The state wants us to take care of it. And we have a responsibility to address that. So.
And who is going to speak to this item?
Case.
Okay.
Yes.
Kate Wally, Environmental Services and Planning Director. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I have a presentation for you on local control options for administration of the buffer law. Next slide, please. The clicker's unavailable and not working, so I'll just ask Laura over there to advance the slide, so I apologize for that. The public waters riparian buffer requirement of 50 foot has been met by our shoreland ordinance, which has been in effect since 1989. Next slide, please. This is the map that the Winona County Soil and Water Conservation District uses. Daryl Buck from SWCD is here today as well to answer questions. Next slide, please. So I've got some bullets here, some questions to ask, and I'll have the information that I've been able to ascertain afterwards. What is the extent of the, you can go back one, Laura, of the current shoreland compliance, because that's kind of an important thing. Where are we at for compliance? Next slide now. Thank you. So, and we might have an update from Daryl, and please do pop up at any point. But 1,000 letters went out saying, look, basically you're already buffer compliant. An additional 305, 471 parcels, as it says there, were in question about buffer compliance. And from that group, about 100 people have been contacted to say, look, you know, you need to meet with us. We have some technical expertise for you. And of that group, 45 were found to be in compliance, 38 were seeded, and an additional group will be done at the end of the growing season, around November 1st deadline. That remains then 200 properties that need to be assessed for compliance. Many of those will be found to be compliant. Is that pretty close, Daryl? Okay. Next slide, please. So what tools does our county's SWCD have for affected owners to help them achieve compliance? Having sat in on one board meeting, it was an important point brought up during that meeting that cost share and services, you know, to help with compliance be a component of it. And of course, the excellent staff outreach and technical information with our county's SWCD is an asset. And they're already working with a budget of about $20,000 coming from the state for existing shoreline compliance work. Next slide, please. So they get the grant whether the county would effectively opt in for local administration of buffer compliance. That, and there's reporting tied to that. That's an existing thing that will continue to go on. Next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. However, hot off the press as of yesterday, our Rochester representative from the Board of Water and Soil Resources, Bowser, as we like to call it, said that a one-time grant will roll out sometime after July 1st this year. And the southern half of the state will receive about $2.5 million portioned out by county, and we'll find out soon how much additional cost share and for programmatic help that SWCD can offer to help with compliance. So that installing buffers and cost sharing on alternative practices, I was told by Adam at the Rochester office of Bowser would be part of that. Next slide, please. So how much administration would be needed to achieve compliance? Once the remaining group is contacted, there's a few folks that are not in compliance or not intending to be compliant or not cooperative. That's an important point. Next slide, please. The question is, compliance will be achieved by Bowser on a state level or funding given to the county to achieve compliance on a county level. So would residents prefer to work with county staff or the state about compliance issues? That is really the question. So either the Rochester office is going to administer a larger area or we take it on. I think a corollary can be made to the successful feedlot program. The feedlot officer here is enjoying success between 2015 and 2016 with the number of compliant cases, the consistency of inspection with sort of fair and I would say efficient administration of it. It's just very straightforward, and I think the folks that she comes in contact with, Emily Bartusik, our feedlot officer, appreciate this efficiency and the fact that it's locally administered. Not every county has chosen to do that, but we are very successful at it, and we feel like that is something that we could bring to the table as well. Next slide, please. So what goals and objectives would be achieved by us doing this? Well, the 2014 comp plan, as well as the county water plan and requirements of our own shoreland ordinance, which has long been in effect, are certainly satisfied by this administration. Next slide, please. I confirmed with the county attorney's office and staff from planning, zoning, and environmental services that we have the staff capacity to administer the administrative penalties for non-compliance as we whittle down that number to hopefully a very small number of folks that are non-compliant. So we would not need to add any additional staff. We would be doing a little bit of reshuffling of responsibilities in sort of a compliance category. Next slide, please. How much money would we get from the state for local control administration? Your memo states $65,000, and that number was in flux, but I think we could use that as a bottom number. And next slide, please. The most recent number as of yesterday's Bowser office is $68,593 to administer this program instead of state administration for 2017, and $83,000 to $85,000 for 2017, and all future years will be funded as well if county elects to have jurisdiction of the buffer law. Because it's county aid, there are no reporting requirements that are especially onerous. Because we will of course track, just like the feedlot program, if we assume, based on the commissioner's discussion and feelings on the matter, it would be just built, I guess, like anything else. You photograph, you document, and it's a very prescribed method, such as exactly what Bowser would do. Perhaps the difference might be that if regionally administered by the state, because somebody's going to administer it. It's either going to be the state or it's going to be us as the county. I'm concerned that if we do not take administration, that the amount of time that our Winona County Board of Soil and Water Resources, or our Winona County Conservation District has to work on cost share alternative practices in a positive sense is going to be taken up by trying to do case building for Bowser and in a penalty kind of situation. And I think that is a less productive use of our resources as I'm currently interpreting it.
I have a quick question. The 68 to 83,000, does that come into our budget or into the Soil and Water District's budget?
That would come into, Commissioner Jacob and Commissioner Pomeroy. That comes into our budget. the county's budget. The $20,000 that has been currently continually received by the Winona County Soil and Water Conservation District will continue to come in, and they will get a bump also out of our share of that 2.5 million. So that would be for our purposes to use. Now, if there was, if we found that there was a shortfall for programmatic reasons, and that there was such a very small number of administrative penalty orders needed, I think we have some flexibility there. In fact, I was told that yesterday on the phone. As long as the funding is used to enforce and implement the buffer law, and that's really the intent of it. We're trying to put compliance together and to come up with the cost share programs and everything that's as helpful as possible. And hopefully there's just a very minimal commitment, or not commitment, but minimal number of folks that we're talking about that would fall under the non-compliant category. Next slide, please. So we'll cover the costs. Will the funding cover the costs our county will incur if we assume jurisdiction of enforcement instead of the state? And we can't predict the non-compliant numbers or exactly the costs. But if we ended up issuing administrative penalty fines, if you will, for non-compliance, we collect those funds as well. We don't have to turn those back over to the state. Just like the state would collect those same penalty funds. And we can opt out subsequently if we find that we have a mismatch going in terms of the budget. But at this point, we would accept and we would need to make that determination fairly soon. And I have a slide about that. Next slide, please. So by 4:30 p.m. on June 28th, we have to contact Bowser and state that we are opting in to administer, or we've chosen to opt out and not administer this program.
Okay, I'm sorry, just to be clear, can we opt out on an annual basis?
Administrator Fritz, yes, and Commissioner Pomeroy, we can opt out on an annual basis, and I'll have to defer to Daryl, but I believe that we can also opt out with 60 days notice.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if we find this isn't working, it's a greater number of folks that are non-compliant than we anticipated, despite the good works of Mr. Buck's folks and technical experts and the cost share dollars and so on. That is certainly a possibility in future.
Okay, so that sparks a question for me. So is that payment an annual payment or a one-time payment, that 65 to 83,000 you had up there?
Commissioner Jacob and Commissioner Pomeroy, that's an annual payment, and I was told that it will continue. Now, as much as anything can continue by the legislature, none of us are naive enough to think that, if we had a major recession, that everything is automatically continued. But we have been told by Bowser that it is an annual funding and not just, we're stating these numbers for 2017 and 2018, and then good luck after that. If we found that funding is inadequate at any point, as Administrator Fritz stated, we can opt out. But at this point, I believe our zoning administrator was at a recent meeting and stated that most of the counties that have corollaries with us are opting in.
That's correct. Yesterday at the Pisa regional meeting in Owatonna, there was probably 15 counties that were present, and we had a discussion on that, and most of the county boards in those counties were going forward with this discussion this week. And there was one or two that expressed some questions yet as far as the funding, and were potentially hesitant in opting in at this point. But I think even the conservative approach is they were opting in if there is any doubt, just so they can see where it is. But if they don't like, I guess, what the final numbers pan out, they could always opt out by giving the proper notice. But that was a general consensus of the southeastern Minnesota counties yesterday.
In order to achieve this participation and to move forward, then an opt-in resolution is required, or barring that, if the commissioners do not approve opt-in, then an opt-out resolution might be in order. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Kovesi.
I have a question. Basically, we said there were 305 people not in compliance as of May, and that 205 did not respond. So they're in the kind of unknown category. Do we have any idea of their intentions or their ideas of why they wouldn't comply, or how difficult is it going to be? You know, do we know any factors about this group of 205 people?
Commissioner Kovesi and Chairman Pomeroy, our SWCD has been working toward contacting this group, and so they'll be working through that. There could just be timing issues as far as planting and
Right.
seasonality of things. I myself get busy, you know, a letter might sit that I know that I need to deal with for a little bit, but that's part of the responsibilities of the staff there, and they're working through that right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Excuse me.
We're still getting calls every day, so that number hopefully will just keep on going down. What the plan is, what my thought right now is, when we get more information from Bowser, especially on that 2.5 million, how much we're going to get for cost share assistance to landowners, then I was planning on sending out another letter to whoever's left over yet and reminding them that of the deadline and seeing if they want help, or if it comes down to the deadline and we aren't able to determine their compliant, then we're going to have to list them as non-compliant.
But the money can be used not only for staff time to do these things, but also for incentives for programs.
I believe that 2.5 million, what'd you say, the south half? So I don't know if that's going to be roughly 40, 45 counties. I believe that's mostly, or if not all, for cost share.
Okay.
Whether it's cost share for doing a seeding to get it in compliance, or if it's cost share to, if they're going to have some other kind of programs.
Okay.
We also have CRP and RIM and
Right.
PrEP available that may help get some of the people in there. Those aren't the most attractive right now, especially like CREP. It has a minimum acreage of 8 acres, and it's going to be tough to get very many fields buffers that are going to be up to 8 acres
Right.
large. So
It would be large. Yeah, I would just like to take a minute at this point also to say, to me, this is another example of our staff coordination across different departments, if you speak, or different programs, and I appreciate that cooperation and collaboration. I think it works for the benefit of our citizens. I would also like to thank the planning department for the total package of information that we had on the background of the CUPs. There was a lot of research that was involved in terms of decommissioning costs and recycling programs and issues like that, and I think you provided some very strong information to put us in the right direction on that. So I do appreciate your staff going that extra mile. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chairman Pomeroy and Commissioners, I just wanted to make one quick point. If we do not choose to opt into this administration of the buffer law, essentially, or our own shoreland rules, what will happen is not zero staff involvement. I sort of look at it as, right now, we are also getting folks coming to the counter with the letters. We're getting calls. This funding helps to defray some of the staff time and add funding to the county for the planning and environmental services budget for things that we're going to, for lack of a better word, get stuck doing a lot of the work of for, I'm thinking, regional administration anyway. And so we're already involved. It's not really zero involvement or 100% by Bowser Regional Office. And so that was just a perspective note I wanted to add, and thank you.
Commissioner Jacob?
Thank you. I think maybe Daryl, to help put some of this in perspective, 205 sounds like, yeah, that's a big number. But if you look at how many parcels there are in Winona County, 205 is a minute amount. And we've been at this since 1989, at a standard that's at least as strict as what the state is proposing now, right? What percentage would you say, if you were to say, what percentage compliant are we at this point? I think this is.
I've heard 85%. And
We were at 80 when a lot of these numbers originally came out. There's about 2,300 parcels on public waters in our county. And like you said, there's only about 200 landowners, I think. About 130 parcels have already been determined compliant, which would leave about 220, that's about right, left there, parcels that are.
We're 90%.
Out of 2,300, that's.
So had this been 1989 and I had been on the board and we were going to adopt this, I would have been all against expansion of regulations. But since the work has been done for the last almost 30 years and we're at this point of compliance, and given how the state has changed its approach on this, it had been 50 feet on both sides all the way, and now it's at a 50-foot average. Is that where it's at now, or?
That's correct. The state requirement is a minimum of 30 feet with a 50-foot average.
Okay, so we're already at a higher standard. We're at 50 feet on both sides. What this gives our constituents is a sense of stability. They know this has been the program in Winona since 1989. No matter what the state does, we're already fully compliant. To me, it would be we're going to accept a payment for something that we've been doing way before anyone else started doing it, and it would be a disservice to the community to do anything other than to just move forward with this, and it'll be the easiest for the constituents to follow.
I move that we opt in. Excuse me. Oh, sorry.
No motion.
Speaking order.
Proceed.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kovesi, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to adopt the opt-in resolution. Was there any further comment?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Okay. I personally have some real angst over this, and some of the history that I've been given. And I agree, we're more restrictive already, so yeah, we might as well take their money and figure out how to best use it. I would hope, though, that our goal is 100% compliance voluntarily. This whole idea of punishing. I read a newspaper article, and I should have made a copy of it, but some editorialist said, we will punish those landowners. And that raises the hair on the back of my neck right now when we say we're going to punish. And
Well, fines and penalties.
yeah, that's punish, and that's punish. But I would hope our goal in Winona County is to be 100% voluntary compliance. The maps are concerning to me, of what maps, and it is a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit dubious in the resolution. The 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas. It says, whereas Winona County is electing jurisdiction on public waters and any drainage ditches. So, and I've had conversation with some of my neighbors, and some of the soil and water conservation districts in other counties have added properties to these maps. So what maps are we going to use, and at what level are properties allowed to be added? Or I'm working to get a property maybe removed. Again, where are we going with this? Is Winona County looking to reach and add more things?
Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Pomeroy. Right now, our Soil and Water Conservation District is working with the DNR. It's a DNR map that was put together. That is part of that is the compliance map. But for properties that are in error, that shouldn't be in it, or to make sure that our shoreline map and the DNR map, perfectly dovetail, the DNR is willing to, talk about something that should come out or that should have been in. And I think, Daryl, you have an update, if you don't mind popping up one more moment about the map thing, because As Commissioner Ward stated, it's very important that these match and that they be accurate.
Yeah, as far as the public waters maps, that's what we're doing. We're working with the DNR, making sure everything's the same. There were a couple sites that I didn't believe met the requirements of public waters, and talking with the DNR, they're reviewing a couple of them. They took off. One of them they're still reviewing, trying to decide. As far as what the other counties are talking about adding, it does not add to the buffer law regulations, but the buffer law did require SWCDs to put together a map and or a list of other waters of concern for that county. And so other counties are adding those lists, and it's up to the county whether they want to make some enforcements on them or not. They can say, thank you for the list, we'll keep an eye on it. Or they could say, thank you for the list, we're going to put all these different requirements on. That's all up to the county, though.
So what's our list look like?
We don't officially have it yet. Our resolution will be going to the board tomorrow, to our SWCD board, but they have approved the map, I guess. That will be just some of the disappearing streams that are coming off from the Decorah edge. And it's just a map of those waters, and it does not put any requirements on, and the county doesn't have to either. It's all the county. If you look at that map and say, yeah, we have a lot of water quality issues that we're concerned about, we should do something, you guys could do it. It could be completely different than the buffer law, or you could say, thanks for the list. We don't think there's anything of concern right now, so we're not going to.
So who has the jurisdiction, the Soil and Water Conservation Board or the county board? Because once a list is created, lists don't go away.
Yeah, the county has a jurisdiction.
Okay, so it will come to us for final.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what we have to do is we have to put together the list and present it to you guys.
Okay, all right. Because when you read the statute, and again, statutes read very, I think they're should be printed on gray paper for a reason. Because it does say Soil and Conservation District with the landowner, and then when it refers to the board, that's the Bowser Board. And so I don't think it's a clear cut who has control or who's in charge here, folks, just so that we know. There's multiple agencies that control water, and once these things go on lists, it's very hard to get them off a list, and it's a long reach of the government to control our land.
As far as the other waters, there's nothing in there that gives Bowser any, or the state any control. It's all either the county or watershed district. We only have one in our county, and I don't believe they have any enforcement authority, so they wouldn't be taking that on either.
Okay, and it is interesting, you've mentioned the different programs, CRP, Conservation Reserve Program. According to statute, that's an exemption. So
if they're in the program.
Does that already meet, if you have it in CRP, you're already in compliance?
Yeah, if you're in CRP, I'm not sure why they wrote that in as an exemption. If you have it in CRP, you have cover on there, so you're compliant.
Okay, all right.
So I'm not sure why they wrote it as an exemption.
Okay, and one of the other issues that I think we need to be cognizant of in accepting some of this responsibility is invasive species. Winona County is a hotbed for invasive species. I got it wrong. Invasive species, sorry.
3 times fast.
Yeah, need another cup of coffee. So just be aware of what we're agreeing to when we talk about the compliance. I mean, if you put a buffer in, you seed it down, believe me, the weeds are going to grow faster than anything you plant. That's just a given. And so if we're accepting responsibility for invasive species, that just be aware of where this might be going. And then the angst I have, the buffer law is just regulations for rural lands. It does not include any cities or municipalities. Will they have their own regulations and controls of, waters? I drive by Lake Winona when I come in. There's maybe a 10-foot buffer. There's beautiful green grass, mowed green grass. There's not a weed in there, so that's telling me there's something done to control the weeds and everything.
the storm waters of the city of Winona. It says right on, they had kids stencil them, goes right into the lake. So the buffer is all about rural lands. What's next for the city urban lands?
Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Pomeroy, I know that working with Lake Winona folks, staff liaison, to try to keep tabs on what's happening there for best management practices is an important part of water planning for the entire county. We talked briefly, informally, with some of the commissioners and some of these agencies about sustainable turf, sustainable water use in the communities, possible reuse of gray water, as well as increasing shoreland buffers for lakes to try to avoid excessive nitrogen going into those kind of water bodies as well. So our water planning for the county through our water resource person and the other partners that we have intends to take all of those things into account and to also provide technical, maybe twice a year seminars for those kinds of issues to try to look at it from a best management standpoint.
So the answer is they're not bound by any of this buffer legislation.
Please do.
And are they? We have a Winona water plan. Are the cities, the municipalities included under our water plan?
I'm not sure about that part.
Okay.
As far as the buffer law, the buffer law is for any tilled land. So if it's primarily in Winona County, that's going to be our corn and bean.
You said something that tilled
if
land.
if it's within the city limits, it still requires to follow that buffer law. The city of Winona is an MS4 for stormwater. If their stormwater plan covers buffers, then they're exempt. Anybody in the city of Winona would be exempt if the MS4 plan covers buffers.
Okay.
If it doesn't cover buffers, then they're not exempt. When I did all my mapping, I didn't look at whether they were in the city limits or not. If they had cropland within, I put them down as being one that we had to look at. If they had a buffer rule in their stormwater plan, that would have made sure that the cropland wasn't in there. So I went ahead and mapped everything.
Okay, so you just triggered something. You said buffer legislation or this buffer law is for tilled land.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Why is my dry run in a heavily forested area? And I'll share. This is my land. So why is my land that's in a heavily forested? Is it so many feet?
The reason that's a different, that determination is what's
But
public water.
But this is buffer initiative.
Yeah.
So you're compliant.
That's not the issue.
You're
Yes, I am
compliant. What the reason we got the letter is because you have land on public waters. That's a completely different issue that was, the legislature passed back in the '70s.
Buffer
If you
initiative
had any
on my.
land tilled along that public water, then you would have to
Right.
comply to the
You
program.
have to comply, and you are compliant because you don't have any tilled land.
Right, but
within
it's
that
not,
public
but I guess you don't understand my angst. You're saying because it's, in my opinion, personal opinion, is that it's not tilled. It is naturally vegetated, has been, always will, until I decide to do something different, which is, again, is a personal landowner's prerogative. But so why is it under public waters and this map says Minnesota Buffer Initiative?
Because any land on the public waters has to meet those buffer initiative requirements.
And see, that's
And
where I'm.
That's why we sent a letter to everybody that even was determined compliant. That way they know that they have that requirement. Because when the public waters maps went out, my understanding is not everybody was notified that they even had public waters.
Exactly.
That's DNR. That's nothing to do with us. We didn't, and that was back in '79 through '82, I think.
Right, exactly. So somewhere along the line, somebody determined that this totally vegetative, heavily forested bottoms was public waters, but they did not notify the landowners. And you talk about unclear, government take of property rights. That's so blatant. But of course, that was back in '79 and '80, and that's, I guess, the way the government operated.
The only thing I was going to add maybe on that topic is, I think in '88, we accepted a zoning ordinance with the new DNR shoreland map at that time. That had been probably a few years before that, in the mid-'80s. So that was from '89, and then in 1996, there was a lawsuit, I believe, from Trout Unlimited against the DNR on that map, because it didn't include these dry runs or these head areas that fed the public waters. So they did expand the public waters map in 1996. And I think the resolution, the statute, I believe is 103F.48. That's the official waters map. It's also on the website. If you get into the DNR website, you can download the public waters inventory map. But that essentially was the catalyst where a lot of these, what people, I guess were a little bit off guard, because a lot of times they didn't have running water or flowing water associated with them. There were dry runs, but they were the head points to some of these streams. So with that lawsuit from Trout Unlimited, that really forced the DNR to expand that public waters inventory map.
So at today's standards, if we were going to do something like this, tell people that they've got public waters on it, would we notify them before we did this? Or would they still just do it without my knowledge?
Yeah, they wouldn't get direct notice. There'd be just general noticing from the state agency that said,
okay,
we're reviewing and commenting and going through a process that could have widespread changes, effects to a county.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm having ongoing conversations with the DNR on a personal issue. But so let's see. I'm sorry. So there is technically there's some issues that there's a lot of angst across the state of Minnesota. Yes, Winona County, we're more restricted and everything, but I'm speaking more for a bigger population of landowners. Is that there basically is no landowner compensation for these things. There is going to be, luckily, some cost share, but that's one time. Funding. I think Ms. Qualley said it's there now, but we know legislatures change, and they only guarantee it. There's only a guarantee for 2 years, and then it might go away. The appeal process, has that been defined as a process, or that's something that's going to be coming? Again, the county is being asked to react very quickly. I mean, we're given less than, 15 days or something to react, or 30 days to react to what the state legislators did. And I think that serves some injustice, too. But is there an actual appeals process in place, or is that something that they're going to work on?
Well, there is a right to appeal process through Minnesota Statute 103F.48, Subdivision 9, establishing the rights and procedures for the appeal of any kind of penalty or anything that could be punitive for any violation or repeat violation of riparian protection, so that the landowner can appeal in writing the terms and conditions that are issued by the county, if so accepted, or Bowser if we do not accept. And they provide a copy of the administrative penalty that is being appealed, the basis for the appeal, and any supporting evidence. And then the appeal will be reviewed and supporting evidence, and then within 60 days of receipt of the appeal. So there is a statute of limitations also. There, either Bowser or the county would have 2 years in which to commence an APO action. So a fairly long window of time for the SWCD staff to work very closely so that we avoid penalties, and we work toward compliance, the kind of compliance that Commissioner Jacob talked about, and to work on the successes that have already been experienced with the shoreland work.
Okay. But it does say in that statute appealable directly to the Court of Appeals. So would Attorney Sonneman, County Attorney, would you be involved in that if it went to that type of action, or would we hand that off to MCIT, or who's going to bear the responsibility of the law?
Technically, it would be my office, but I don't know if MCIT's even looked at this.
Not unless it were a claim.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, and it says here, and I'm looking at subdivision 9 too,
Yeah.
that the executive director, and I'm assuming that's a Bowser, right?
Right, because the board refers to Bowser.
Right.
Everything.
That decision is appealable to the Court of Appeals, not a direct appeal by the board, the board's decision. So whether maybe it's the state attorney general.
Yeah, well, again, it should be printed on gray paper because it is a little gray in my mind.
I think, yeah.
Just so we're aware of this. And then the other thing is I can support opting in and everything, but I do not want to see a public waters map expanded by Winona County. I think that would be egregious on our part to expand our own little map and make us more liable than our current zoning ordinance and shoreline actions.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so along those lines, when you were asking Daryl about the other waters, I saw that map or the proposal at the last Soil and Water Conservation District meeting, and that was very minimal. I mean, how many miles would that compose? Like less than one, or I mean, it wasn't much.
It really, the map that I put together is not all-inclusive. And, excuse me, part of the documentation also says that on-site investigation should be done on every site before any kind of enforcement would ever be considered. Right now, it's only sections of St. Charles and Saratoga Township where these streams are at, and I think the longest one might be close to a mile, but a lot of them are maybe a couple 100 feet long.
But there wasn't a dozen of them, was there?
Probably not.
And
what these are
and
doing,
they are highly sensitive. So that's water that flows out, a spring that flows out, and then eventually flows back in. So it's an exposed area of surface water, and it certainly, farmers are careful in those areas, but he's just going to identify those areas as being, areas that we want to keep an eye on. And the Soil and Water Board voted, yeah, we should identify these, which I thought that made sense. Couple other points on by staying with the program that we're on at 50 feet, if we turned it back to the state, opted out, and the state goes with this average, you're going to have people that have been compliant to 50 feet. Now their neighbor can go back to 30 feet, and everyone's going to be upset. Well, so-and-so's not doing this, and this standard has changed, and it would just be so much easier to continue on with what we're doing. And then the other thing is, I'm thinking if we're at 90% compliance right now, and this program is funded more than 1 year, I would think the work's going to be done in the first year, largely. I'm surprised that there's funding for the second year. Yeah. You have to repeat. But, I mean, once people are brought into compliance, and I think that last 10% are probably waiting on what's the state doing, what's the county doing. There might be some variances on exactly what they might need to do. I don't think it's going to be very hard to bring those last 10% into compliance. And with that 90%, I think, wow, that's a testament to the conscientious nature of this community to be at 90% at that high of a standard before the state even enacts. This Winona County, you hear about the bad, but there's a lot of good by the agricultural community in particular. They should be proud of the work that's been done out there. So I'll make a motion.
I think we had a motion. Was it Commissioner Kovesi, seconded by Commissioner Jacob?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
I do have a question, because people have asked, and Daryl would probably know this. So how many, these conservation federal programs that we talk about, CREP and CRP and everything, how many acres are available to be enrolled currently? Are there acreages available for people to enroll in those? And CRP is usually the first step.
Excuse me. CRP is real close to their cap right now. The CREP is a
So
combination
real
of.
close, meaning, do you have any idea of acres
I have
available?
no idea.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know if anybody does. And FSA is who's in charge of that, and they seem to get an update every couple weeks or so.
Okay.
Of how many acres are available, so it's that close.
Okay.
As far as RIM, the state did approve a lot of funding in the last couple of weeks for RIM. And that, what you had mentioned earlier, that there's no compensation other than cost share. The RIM is actually a permanent easement, so they would get paid, I don't remember the percentage, but it's a very high percentage of the land value for a permanent easement on that area if they were able to get in.
And permanent easement, you mean that allows the public to come in? What does permanent easement
It
mean?
means they can no longer crop or graze it.
Okay.
They still own it, and they still own control of it also. They can post it and keep people off if they want. It's very different than a fishing easement that they would get from DNR. The CREP is a combination of CRP and RIM. And my understanding is those acres that were approved for CREP from the federal government have already been set aside, so they don't have to worry about hitting that cap anytime soon. My concern locally is that 8-acre minimum. I think it's going to be hard for most of our landowners to meet that 8-acre minimum.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Cabesi.
I just had a couple comments. I appreciate the serious discussion because this is important to landowners. I would just like to say that I would like to keep the list of public waters fluid, if you'll pardon the pun, because we are on karst topography. If we would happen to have, some some unpredictable flooding events or just whatever, our public waters list might grow. It also might shrink. So I would just trust our staff to be monitoring that, not to say, please don't put any more on there. Also, the city does have initiatives through, and the county also, and they're all collaborative programs. One is the Healthy Lake Winona, which is mostly citizen-led. It includes our universities, it includes Trout Unlimited, but it is mostly citizens, and it became an operation after one of Winona County's water meetings at the Town Center. That became an initiative that citizens wanted to take on. And they've solicited funding, they've solicited advocates. They are working to remove invasives. They're working to control invasives. They're working to improve the buffer around Lake Winona because obviously that is an issue. And, that is a coalition. We also have Sustain Winona, which is a grant program. So, there are programs going on. I would say that if anything, what I would like to come out of this is also a chance for some research. I mean, one of the opportunities we have, this is one of the objectives of this program is to improve the health of our waters. And we have known impaired waters. And so if we can start to show whatever effects that this is having, hopefully positive effects, then I think we can prove another option for farmers to use. They can put it into crop rotation. They can do other issues. Obviously don't farm right up to the public waters. So, I think that if we can prove to people that these things are working, that obviously there's going to be a better buy-in. And I think we're on the verge of that. I would like to see more come out of this program in that area. So, intern possibilities, whatever. But I am in support of the motion, and I think if we have no further discussion, we
Commissioner Ward.
Just one point, Commissioner Jacob, the reason I raised the issue of miles being added, I had conversation with a colleague in Fillmore County, and again, I got the, and Daryl's going to dispute this, I got the information as county commissioner to county commissioner. He indicated that the Soil and Water Conservation District had added approximately 150 miles additional of
Daryl's going to, from a staff perspective, give a different take on that.
I just want to clarify, the list that is being added is not public waters.
Okay,
Public
well, waters of concern or something.
Determined by DNR only. The additional list that each district has to do is just a local list, and it's up to the county. And same with Fillmore County, they can look at that 100 miles and say, thank you, but we're not going to do anything about it. Or they could say, yeah, we agree, we're going to do something. It's all up locally. It does not become part of the official public waters.
Right, but it's on a list, and the lists never go away. And they were very concerned that that amount had been added on a separate list. So that's why I raised that and queried that.
Did you have a question? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, well, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the opt-in resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Last item is 7.3, receive monthly finance and budget update for April 2017.
We'll go over the April update. The beginning cash started at 11.7 million. Revenue was 230,000, and the expenses were 1.2. Ending cash in the general fund was 10.7 million. For the year, it started out at 15.4 million. Actual revenues were 1.6, and the expenses were 6.3. Again, ending cash was 10.7. The variance in the general fund from this year to last year was a negative 4.6 compared to last year, a negative 4.5. Overall, the variance is a negative 7.8 compared to a negative 5.1. Human Services is in the negative, and I think I've mentioned that every month here. They are negative at this point. So any updates that, or any questions that you have on this update? If not, we'll go to the summary. Summary starts out at beginning cash flow at 21 million. Revenues are 5.9. Actual expenses are 13.5. Ending cash is 13.4. Same variances at the bottom here compared to the previous document. No questions, we'll go to the summary.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, do question. What, we always put 2016 and compare it to 2017. That's a pretty significant difference. What, 2.5 million more.
And I ran some numbers here. We do have some one-time expenses that actually have occurred in a couple departments, and there are a couple departments that are actually running over. And also, then we also have the Human Services that I think it's also related back to out-of-home placement again.
Well, the biggest difference there too, though, is in highway.
Yeah, the highway didn't receive as much revenues at this point.
There's about $1.8 million difference.
Right.
Yeah.
If no questions, we'll go to the summary budget. Summary budget. I actually have a mistake on the summary budget. I had that this was 25% of the way through the year. It's actually 33%. I didn't actually change that number. So we do actually have that general fund is running over, and so is Human Services at the present time. And I kind of went through Human Services, out-of-home placements I know are high, and in the general fund we have some departments that actually had some one-time expenses that have occurred. And then there's a couple departments that are running a little bit higher at the same point of last year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mulder? If not, we will go to Commissioner Kovesi. I believe you had a comment.
I just wanted to say that after the National Institute of Corrections training, I think the emphasis is put back on us to continue our planning and to continue to move forward, hopefully, with our planning. I think that became extremely evident throughout those 3 days that we spent here. And so I would like to have either a working session or a future agenda item, and I don't believe I need a second commissioner to
That's
continue
already,
this.
it's already on the agenda for July 11th.
Good, because this obviously can't stop and needs to go on.
Commissioner Ward?
Two things. I would ask that we consider changing our meeting time. On June 27th, we're scheduled to have a 7 o'clock at night meeting, and there's a major celebration in the community, Family Night on the Farm, which takes some of us, it should take us all to it. We should all participate, but if we meet at 7, it really takes us out of the flow of that event. So I would ask permission maybe to consider changing that meeting to a morning meeting, a 9 o'clock a.m. meeting. If anybody has any?
Can we just consensus do that, or do we need to?
It'd have to be noticed, of course.
Yeah, and I think we're early enough to notice a change in time. I'm seeing heads shake yes.
Is there any press?
Yeah.
Just a note that I believe we have some presenters that were planning to come at that meeting, so I would anticipate that they'll be okay with the time change. But I think it might have been, at least one of them was kind of banking on the fact that it was a night meeting.
Are they from out of town, or?
What, reschedule them?
I
Or?
think it's doable, though, the ones that
Okay.
we're aware of. I think we can schedule if need be.
Okay, so I would appreciate changing that.
Yeah,
kind of
I
night.
agree.
Do that by motion, just to make it official?
Yes,
I'll move to change our June 27th meeting to 9 a.m.
second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to move the June 27th, 7 o'clock meeting to 9 o'clock a.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
And of course, we need to put in that, amend that motion to order sunshine and fresh air and make it a successful
You take
event.
sunshine wherever you go, so we don't have to do
Yeah,
that.
sunshine. All right.
Yeah, we approved the large assembly permit
Yes.
and all of that, so I know this event is also for June the 27th, so it's just in Rolling Stone, so, just down the road, so I think we can all be there.
Yeah. Okay, good. The other thing, I was reminded today as I picked up my mail, we have the county fair coming up, and this is their T-shirt, and the county fair is July 12th through the 16th over in St. Charles, so everybody put that on their calendar. And you can buy these beautiful 4-H design T-shirts and add to your collection. I know, let's see, Commissioner Sonneman. And we're
County
walking
Attorney Sonneman.
Yeah, we're walking billboards on that, so.
I had mine on in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, and a man said, "Oh, I know where Winona County is," and I said, "He's a truck driver," and so I said, "Well, stop in, and especially at the fair." So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming up. Thank you.
Commissioner Jacob?
I think Commissioner Ward already covered that Family Night on the Farm is coming up here on the 27th, and just coincidentally, Wabasha County just held their Family Night on the Farm, and they held it in Winona County.
Oh, really?
So,
By mistake, or?
Awesome.
Any other business?
Those
If
roads
not,
are so
I entertain a motion
confusing
to
out
adjourn.
there.
so moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.
Here's my. Well, so they never let me know. I didn't know this. So I get this letter.
You're in a lot of lists.
Oh, I know.